Marcus, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Great, thanks.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Strategic Planning and Policy Committee meeting. We're here today to deliberate on, deliberate our deliberations on our alcohol policy and bylaw. First of all, I'd like to ask Delmarie for karakia, please.
Kia ora na katoa. I'm going to invoke the sun again today. Tākiri mai te ata, ura te ata, kāke te ata, uru mai te ao te tangata, ki ana riringa, ki tōna kaua, tēnei te ao. Hau mārama, I rongo whakairia, hui e taiki. He mihi nui ki a koe, Marcus, kei Tekapo, kei a koe kōruatahi ko Roger I te kāinga, he mihi ki a kōrua ko Joe I tēnei rangi, tēnā tātou I te whare. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Delmarie. Okay, right. Well, moving into our agenda, we'll call for apologies. We have apologies this morning from Mike Pettit and Bill Harris for personal reasons. We also have an apology from Mayor Susan, who's on council business this morning. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? So Claire will move, Philip will second. All in favour?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Right, disclosure of members' interests. We've got Marcus online and looking like he's in a very sunny place. And I understand you wanted to declare a conflict of interest this morning, Marcus?
Yeah, Deputy Chair for the Liquor Licensing Committee.
Okay, yep, happy to accept that, and you have a good rest of your day. Right, I'd just like to acknowledge Roger. We have you online this morning. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
We'll just move on to any late items, please. Nothing this morning. Right, we'll move on to the confirmation of order of the meeting. Have a mover and a seconder, please. Thank you. Bruce is going to move and Lou is going to second. All in favour? Carried. All right, well, we'll go into our first item. So I'm going to hand over to Minka and to Carl to lead us through the deliberations for this morning.
Oh, thank you, Liz. So yeah, we're here today to take the reports as read. We're here to talk about the local alcohol policy, alcohol fees bylaw, and alcohol control bylaw. This has been a bit of a journey. So it initially started gathering evidence last year and ultimately decided to do the three at the same time. There was earlier engagement, informal engagement with the community on the local alcohol policy, just three very specific questions in March earlier this year. And that feedback was then incorporated along with lots of workshops with both yourselves and the community boards to create the draft bylaws and policy that sit here today. And then consultation on those three opened on the 12th of August till the 12th of September this year. Following that consultation, we have created some staff recommendations following that, and we're here to talk about that today. So how we're going to run it is there's basically 15 kind of decision points. So we'll step through it like that, starting with the alcohol fees bylaw, then the alcohol control bylaw, and then finally the local alcohol policy. So in the reports, you will see there are, starting with the alcohol fees bylaw, a little box with staff recommendation, one of one. also in front of you, there are those printouts. That's just for the local alcohol policy because it's a bit more chonk. So we'll start off with the fees online. So first point is the question that got asked during the consultation: do we have the proposed fees increase right? So the alcohol fees bylaw is a new bylaw. It's being proposed to be implemented to alter the current fees, which are set in legislation. It's basically a twofold proposal. It's to introduce the alcohol fees bylaw, and with that, the second part is a blanket increase of fees as currently set out in the Sale and Supply Alcohol Fees Regulations 2013, starting off with a 35% increase on top of the current fees from the 1st of July 2025, and then a further 35% on top of the original fees from the 1st of July 2026. So just to be clear that the percentage increase is on top of the current fees. Both of those increases are on top of the current fees. It did come through during consultation that some people interpreted as 35% and then 35% on top of that new fee, but it is both the original fee. So there were 134 submissions on this question. 54.5% of those said yes, they support the fees increase. And so as a result of that, staff recommend no changes to the draft alcohol fees bylaw. That's me.
Okay, oh, thank you, Mika, for that. All right, well, happy to take questions, but just for clarity, so if we work through the Appendix 1 on page 26 of our agenda, and then if there's any questions, well, I'll take those now actually on the alcohol fees bylaw only. So looking around the room, if anyone's got any queries, I think we have, canvassed this. I think we've read a lot of the submissions that have come in around this item. Yes, there are some increases, but they have been explained to us very clearly, the reasons why. So I don't see anyone with any questions. So I'm going to assume that everyone here is not happy with the increases, but certainly understand them and happy to proceed with the recommendation. So with that in mind, on page 17, our recommendation is A, B, C, D, and E. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? So Andrew is happy to move that. Dale Marie is happy to second. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Right, so that is the alcohol fees bylaw now complete. So we'll move on to the alcohol control bylaw. Thanks, Mika.
Thank you. Alcohol control bylaw is an existing bylaw. There are a couple of changes being proposed on this. So it goes into 3 parts here. First one is 24-hour permanent alcohol ban areas. So it's proposed to make all skate parks in the district 24-hour alcohol ban areas. The current alcohol ban area for Cambridge is proposed to extend to include Carter's Flat. In Kihikihi, the proposal is to expand the alcohol ban area to include the end of Havelock Street and the area near the northern end of the block between Leon Street and Leslie Street, where the cicada statue is. And the other current permanent alcohol ban areas in Te Aomuru and Leamington are proposed to stay the same. So received 134 submissions on this point. 70.1% of respondents said, yes, I support the proposed locations, boundaries and times. Staff recommendation is adopting the draft bylaw provisions relating to permanent 24 alcohol ban areas without any changes.
Thanks, Mika. Look, and very heartening to see that the majority of people certainly agreed with the draft proposal. So that percentage was quite high. So just for clarity, if you want to, we work through the appendix, it's on page 50. But Claire, do you have a question?
Well, not a question, but I note that the ban time period for Arapuni and Bulmers Landing was extended. and that was in response to, you know, a submission that we received. And yeah,
Correct.
so I was pleased to see that because I think that's a reasonable, I suppose, accommodation for yeah, that the locals that are using that area and causing, you know, obviously, you know, not being causing a nuisance with their consumption of alcohol. So I was pleased to see that.
Yeah, a small change there. So I think, is everyone comfortable with that small change? Yeah.
So just to be clear, that's not what we're talking about right now, because there was never a 24-hour ban proposed there. It's coming. It's coming. Recommendation.
Thanks, Claire. Did you have any other questions on this item? No? Happy to continue, Mika?
Okay, so second recommendation, 2 of 3, is related to time restricted permanent alcohol ban areas. So here the proposal is, it is proposed to include 8 p.m. until 8 a.m. alcohol ban areas in all playgrounds, all cemeteries, Arapuni Landing and Bulmers Landing. A total of 137 submissions were received to the question, do you agree with the 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. permanent alcohol ban areas, locations, boundaries and times? And 68.6% of respondents said, yes, I support the proposed location, boundaries and times. Following the submissions, staff recommend some of the following changes, excluding the prohibitions of the consumption, bringing on or possession of alcohol within certified self-contained vehicles within alcohol ban areas. Changing the proposed 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. alcohol ban area for Arapuni Landing and Bulmers Landing to 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. during winter hours and 9 p.m. till 8 a.m. during summer hours. And that is changes at daylight savings. So same as the dogs, if you remember those times. The reasoning behind this is that there were some concerns raised around freedom camping and how that will be managed for legitimate self-contained vehicles that are currently allowed to stay 2 consecutive nights at both Arapuni Landing and Bulmers Landing. So a few things were considered in making this recommendation. It's who is the bylaw actually targeting with these restrictions, how Bulmers Landing and Arapuni Landing are used, what other councils are doing in this area, and how would this practically be implemented. Yeah. So those changes have been made in the draft bylaw attached.
Thanks,
in the
Mika. I
report.
think we've struck a pretty good balance there. Question from Philip.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you for today. Just a question on the timing of the daylight saving and things like that. When we did the dog bylaw, we were promised great, really good signage with regards to off-lead and on-lead. How good is the signage going to be on this? Because we're still waiting on that signage. So how good is the signage going to be to make the message very clear? And how long will we wait for it to be to go up, the
Yeah.
signs to go up?
Yeah, so that is part of what we're currently doing, is establishing exactly where those signs will be and trying to make sure that they don't necessarily need to be switched out when the timing changes, so that they are permanently in place where they're visible. But for this bylaw, you do need signage, so that will come from somewhere.
So on that signage, I'm a ratepayer in another council, and they have signage for dogs. The same could be installed for this as well, where it's on hinges and it folds down for one message and up for another message. And those signs have been there for 5+ years. The longevity is good, and the message, and it's really simple. And somebody just goes in, or a staff member goes down and changes them depending on the time of year and things like that. So without any extra cost, for putting new signage up every 6 months sort of thing.
No, we haven't gotten that far as to exactly what the signs will look like, but also working in with the parks team because there are new signage proposed. Anyway, I think that's been put on the back burner a little bit now, but it'll also work in with that. So it might, in some places it might be a sticker, in some places it might be movable. It depends what's appropriate for the location.
And one, sorry, just really briefly, one message has a sort of background that's green, and when you fold it down, the background of that messaging is red sort of thing with different coloured font or whatever. So yeah,
No, thank you for that.
very clear.
Just following up on that, so great question, and one that we've discussed in the with Carl's team and Parks in terms of implementation processes. Certainly need the appropriate signage for the enforceability of it. It's a question of timing and implementation and resourcing, so it's something in hand.
All right, Monty.
Just a comment. I support the change to 9 p.m. It seems about right. It's sending a message that it's okay to have a drink at the end of your activities, but it's not a place for a party. So I think it's about right for me.
Thank you. All right, Mika, we'll let you carry on.
The final point for the alcohol control bylaw is coming from additional comments from submitters that didn't necessarily fit into those two questions. So they were centered around three themes. It was the exclusion to the alcohol ban areas, alternative proposals, and submissions and support. Staff recommend from these changes the following, from these submissions, the following changes. So there's a change in wording to the exclusions in the bylaw. It reads, it's proposed to read now, to avoid doubt, this bylaw does not apply within the following buildings: the Cambridge Town Hall, the Council Office Building at 23 Wilson Street, Cambridge, the Te Aomuru Events Centre, Selwyn Street. The changes, the Te Aomuru Library and Community Room, Selwyn Street, Te Aomuru, and the Council Office Building at 101 Bank Street. And that's just, the thinking behind that is to equally provide for both libraries in both towns and the associated public meeting rooms where events often occur. The purpose of the proposed change is to make the requirements for the Te Aomuru Library the same as for the Cambridge Library. It just means we're clarifying that the library is not a public place for the purposes of this bylaw. It would not prevent council prohibiting alcohol on the premises as a property owner. It just means that you wouldn't be in breach of the bylaw if alcohol was served on the premises, if free alcohol was consumed on the premises for any functions.
Okay, thanks, Mika. All right, any queries on this one? So we've got Claire, then Monty.
Yeah, well, I just thought it was really good to accommodate those requests through the submissions. Yeah, I'm really happy with that. And yeah, so I was going to offer to move the recommendation, but Monty would like to speak to. Yeah.
Just got a query about the Kihikihi Community Hall, why that's different to the others. I couldn't quite understand that.
The advice we got there from the property team is that hall was managed quite differently to the others, that there's no contracts in place in terms of the management, and the arrangements for the booking of that hall is operated quite differently, and they didn't want to encourage alcohol consumption in that facility due to the arrangements they used to book it.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
Thanks, Monty. Right, any other questions on this item? No, okay. Look, what we might do now, we've got the recommendation on page 36 of our agenda. I think I have a mover actually, and Claire has asked it. It's A, B, C, D, and E. So Claire, if you're happy to move, Dale Marie's happy to second. This is the alcohol control bylaw. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right, now, we could break now for a few minutes if we wanted to. We have one more part of this, of our deliberations, which is our local alcohol policy, which is going to obviously has a lot more, no doubt we'll have a lot more discussion and deliberations. How does everyone feel? Should we break for 10 minutes?
We've only just started.
I know. I think if everyone is happy, we will just carry on. This is going to be a little bit, well, maybe a slightly lengthier item. Let's just proceed. Okay, so Mika, so we're now on page 67 of our agenda, and the local alcohol policy. You take it away.
Excellent. So firstly, I'd just like to say thank you, Claire, for your comments. Yeah, we've looked at those and intend to address this by updating the recommendations to enable staff to update the draft to correct those minor typographical errors. Staff will illustrate this change to the recommendation at the end of the item on the screen before resolution is adopted. So yeah, thank you very much. First, so yeah, there's 11 decision points in this one. Now you can look at that printout on your desk if you want to follow along. That might make life a little bit easier. So we'll start off with on licenses. So those are your restaurants, cafes, places where you drink on the premises. The first question that was asked during consultation is, do you support the changes to the list of higher risk on licensed premises and their trading hours? The proposal is to reduce the trading hours of higher risk, new or renewed on licensed premises from 9 a.m. till 2 a.m. the following day to 9 a.m. till 1 a.m. the following day. Expanded the list of higher risk on licensed premises to include class 1 restaurants and other unlicensed premises listed in section 5.3 of the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Fees Regulations 2013 with a weighting of 15 or more. 136 submissions were received on this point, with 61.4 saying, yes, I support the inclusion of new higher risk unlicensed premises in the new hours of 9 a.m. till 1 a.m. Staff recommendation is as follows. It is to amend clause 2.4.3 so that the trading hours requirements apply to both new on licenses and on license renewals. And the reasoning behind this is that this is a carryover from the current lapse wording. This provision really should have always applied to new and existing premises within 100 metres of residential zone, but wording maybe wasn't clear. So we're just clarifying that. And do you want to ask your question?
So we'll go Claire and then Roger.
Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify whether or not during the renewal process, can the applicant seek a change, like an extension of their hours if they demonstrate they've been a good operator? Because, you know, what it seemed like in the wording that when the license is issued for the first time, you know, the DLC decides, you know, what the trading hours would be. And it kind of looked like, and it would still apply at each renewal as well. But I just wanted to clarify, like, is there a bit of a process so that their performance can be reviewed? And if it looks like they've been a good operator, that they might, there might be the discretion to allow them to extend those trading hours?
Not under the current provisions. So these would be maximum hours applying to all premises. So the original intention of the wording in the previous lap was to, rather than the hours coming into effect immediately for everybody, was to try and indicate that it would be as those licenses were renewed. So that was the intention of the wording. So no, once if they had hours less than 1 a.m, then yes, they could potentially step up to 1 a.m. But if they've been issued for the maximum, that would be the cap. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Carl. Claire. Right, Roger.
Yes, thank you. And I'm not too sure what the paper is that's been distributed, but of course we don't have access to that. Is there anything important in that paper? But I've just got a few questions here, and I apologize because I'm sure that these definitions would be in the more detailed document. But could you very briefly just identify what is a higher risk licensed premise and what is a Class 1 restaurant. And the third question is, you say very few premises are just like a quantum on that, or an approximate quantum of the very few premises that operate at these hours regularly, just to give me some perception of the number that we're seeing will be affected under this change.
Thanks, Roger. We'll get that question answered. Hey, and just FYI, we'll get that, the paper that we've got in front of us, we'll get that emailed to you now. But
Oh,
it's-
don't worry
it's-
about that. I
It's
think
kind of
it'll
a
be too
cheat
late
sheet,
for me.
really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'll hand back over to Mika to answer your question, or Carl.
Sorry, can you just repeat question number 1?
Yes, definition of higher risk. Second question, definition of Class 1 restaurant.
I'll do it back to front. So a Class 1 restaurant is a restaurant that, as part of its operation, has a separate bar area, and that bar area may at times operate in the nature of a tavern.
Good, thank you. Yep.
And then the high risk ones are essentially any premises that the principal sale is alcohol. So hotel, tavern, and things of that nature, where the main business is alcohol related. So Class 1 restaurants, nightclubs, taverns, adult premises in the on-license space.
Okay. And the final question was the quantum of the very few premises that currently operate at the extended hours. Quantum, approximate.
Yeah, I wouldn't have that exact number. So there would be quite a number of premises that are licensed to operate until 2 a.m. but choose not to. So it's, yeah, I would not have the exact number of how many have made that decision, other than to be able to say anecdotally, on your average night, there is very seldom anyone open at 2 a.m.
I think in the alcohol background report, it was about 3
Good.
that regularly open to that time, but that was the data from last year. So in that time also could have changed.
Well, it gives me a perception of the number of active premises that would be affected by this change, and that seems insignificant to me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Roger. Right, other questions? Monty?
I just wanted to say to Roger, the sheet we've got in front of us is just the staff recommendations word for word compiled into a paper document. So you're not missing anything. It's just the staff recommendations in the boxes.
Thanks, Monty.
We've got ourselves a cheat sheet, which is actually very, it's very helpful. Okay, any other questions on this particular item? No? Okay, Mika, we'll let you carry on.
Thank you. So staff recommendation 2 of 11. The question asked was, do you support the changes to the rules around one-way door policies and discretionary conditions for on licenses? The proposal is that the one-way door restrictions for on licenses are still at the District Licensing Committee's discretion, but that the recommendation, so the things that they should consider when they implement this, has been expanded to include the whole week and higher risk premises. So 134 submissions were received to this question. Staff recommend one-way door restrictions remain at the discretion of the District Licensing Committee or ALA. And also that the following changes to the wording of 2.5.1b for consistency and clarity is implemented, and that is related to host responsibility policy. So this recommendation actually comes from a submission on off licenses, but it applies here. So it's just changing the wording of the host responsibility policy in the discretionary conditions throughout, so that it's the same for all of them. And the new wording proposed is the licensee must develop, display and maintain a policy commonly known as a host responsibility policy to demonstrate the measures in place to promote the responsible consumption of alcohol and always have in place a host responsibility policy. And thank you, Claire, for putting that "and" in there. So, yeah.
It's been highlighted.
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
And that's it.
I think we're all happy with that. Any
Yep.
questions? No, let's carry on.
So recommendation 3 of 11, and this comes from additional comments on licenses. So again, the ones that didn't quite fit under the questions. Staff recommend the addition of the wording from clause 4.3.1 and the potential alcohol-related harm caused by venue hopping to be added to clause 2.2.1 for consistency.
Okay, no problem with that. Venue hopping.
Yeah,
Very
no,
good, carry on.
I just, really the venue hopping is where you've got an increased density of licensed premises. And in looking just looking around in both Cambridge and TI, I couldn't really see many instances where there was that proliferation of licensed premises that would encourage hopping.
It's more just so that the DLC is aware why this clause is in there.
Yep. No, I agree with it being there, certainly. Yep.
Okay. Right, is everyone happy with the on-license part of that? I think we've reached the end. We're going to move on to off-licenses shortly. So just last call for any on-license queries. There we go. Rightio, off-licenses.
Off licenses. So this is your place where you buy alcohol to take away to drink somewhere else. First question that was asked during the consultation is the policy currently sets out that an off license must not be located less than 40 meters near a sensitive facility or community facility. Do you agree with this distance? So this question came from the early engagement that was held earlier in the year. It wasn't a question that was posed at the time, but it became evident that this was something that people had thoughts on. So we thought we'd delve into that further, see if it was worth changing something here. But the proposed changes in the draft are adding community facilities for off licenses only, rehabilitation treatment centres and marae to the list of sensitive facilities. It currently includes schools, early childcare centres and places of worship. Adding that the site proximity restrictions to the sensitive facilities do not apply only if the District Licensing Committee or ALA considers that the impact on users of such facilities will be no more than to a minor extent. Amending how the distance is measured between off-licence premises and a sensitive facility or community facility so that the distance is measured from the entire premises instead of from the front of the premises. Also clarified that the location of sensitive facilities do not affect a licence renewal if such facilities were established after the original licence was issued. However, the DLC and ALA, the decision makers, must consider the impacts of a substantial change in the operation of that off licence on such facilities. 137 submissions were received. The majority of submitters supported 40 metres or above. Staff recommendation 4 of 11 is that there is recommend no change to the current wording of clause 3.3.3 of the draft LAP, leaving the distance between off-licence premises and sensitive facilities and community facilities at 40 metres outside of the permitted area and at the discretion of the District Licensing Committee or ALA, if they are satisfied that there will be no impact other than to a minor extent on those persons using the relevant facility. Staff also recommend the following changes. Words included in the draft lap that are also included in Schedule 1 definitions, they're italicized throughout. And also to address the concerns around certainty, staff recommend amending the definition of community facility to the following. Community facility means a council-owned or managed building that is used by members of the public for recreation, sport, or cultural purposes, such as community swimming pools, libraries, museums, and community halls. It does not include buildings that the public visit predominantly for other purposes, such as tourist information centres or council offices. So the reasoning behind this for the italicizing the words throughout is it became quite obvious that there were some really key terms which were defined, but people hadn't picked up on that. And so there was a bit confusion around that, especially terms such as permitted area and new license, which is quite critical to know what that entails. So now you can easily see what is actually a defined word. And then I think Claire had a question, but other than that, that's it.
Okay, look, thanks, Mika. Right, we'll go to Roger first.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I agree with majority of these recommendations, but I do have a question in the interpretation, and it's adding community facilities and then rehabilitation treatment centres. Now, does that include physiotherapy centres? Because that's a rehabilitation of just, you know, it's not related to alcohol harm. So does that rehabilitation centre include physiotherapy centres? And is it necessary to have a further definition of alcohol/drug related rehabilitation centres?
One moment, please.
Good question, Roger.
The rehabilitation treatment centre is defined in the local alcohol policy. It means residential support houses and inpatient or outpatient specialist units that primarily provide support or treatment of alcohol, drug, or substance abuse or addiction.
That's covered. Thank you.
Good to clarify that. Right, Claire.
Yeah, and so the question that I had in this section is on page 89 of our agenda, and the submitter was worrying about, I think it's the renewal process, whether or not that would be affected by sensitive facilities or community facilities that existed at the time the original off licence was issued. But the submitter's asking whether or not considerations about amenity and good order of the locality just wanted to make sure that their question had actually been addressed in the staff response. That's all, because I wasn't sure if it had been. Yeah.
So every application is going to get the amenity and good order assessment, whether it's a new one or a renewal. So I guess that's the first point. And no, if there's an existing license and a sensitive facility moves next door to it, unless the licensed business significantly changes, then it won't be affected by that sensitive site.
Yeah, and that's fine. I just wonder whether or not a comment could be added that amenity and good order is things that are always considered for every application or something. So, yeah.
Thank you, Claire. Okay, I don't see any other questions, but Wayne, got a comment?
Just want to highlight and make sure the committee's crystal clear. You've received submission from a number of the supermarkets regard to some of these matters, including the 40 metre requirement. I just want to make sure you're comfortable that supermarkets are caught by this 40 metre requirement. As you know, they've got added restrictions on advertising over and above other alcohol outlets, but they still have the access to alcohol requirement. While you just are satisfied that the DLC can consider the impact on users of such facilities will be no more than minor to a minor extent. So it'll be considered by the DLC. So if you get a supermarket located within 40 metres of a sensitive location, then the DLC will consider it. I just want to make sure you're 100% happy with that, because they did raise the issue of uncertainty, that was all.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And we have had a number of, obviously, submissions. So Philip, did you have a question?
Yeah, so just briefly on that, if the supermarket is right opposite a playground within 40 metres, or across the road, that'd be about 40 metres. What do they have to, you said different advertising,
Carlton can probably expand, but under the sale and alcohol legislation, there are particular restrictions on the ability to advertise external advertising of alcohol for supermarkets, right? Compared to normal alcohol stores like Super Liquor and the like. So they have these added restrictions. So, but they still have ease of access to alcohol. So that's still a requirement, as I understand it. So that's a matter you can consider. But yeah, those are the added restrictions. So what are you concerned about within the 40 metre requirement? It's issues of advertising, external advertising, and ease of access of alcohol. So we're talking about new facilities coming in to sensitive locations, not existing. Am I correct on that one, Carl? Right. Good.
All right. So yeah, you've had the submissions. We've heard a number of the supermarkets did come and speak to us, obviously, online and in person. So this is I guess a little bit more of a sensitive issue that may impact locations in the future and potentially growth as well in our district. But personally, looking at the submissions, looking at what the public has, I guess, fed back to us. It's a very close call. We have a bit of a divided, community around this, but on balance, I feel that our 40 metres is still got some flexibility around it. And Mika, did you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, I feel like it's important also just to clarify that there is a clause in there that says that doesn't apply if the applicant can prove that they're not going to have effects on the sensitive facility.
That's right. There's enough flexibility within the design of what we've got here to enable growth and for those businesses to continue to function if the DLC essentially is happy with the potential and draft plans that come through to them. So yeah, for me, on balance, as I said before, it feels like there's enough flexibility there for people to prove that there's not going to be any intent or harmful intent going forward. But Roger, you have a query?
Yeah, and just supporting your comment there, I think if you were looking at the development of a new subdivision and facilities within that subdivision, I don't think that the 40-metre peripheral consideration would be too difficult to manage in terms of the planning of the new retail facility. So I think that could be well incorporated in future new developments.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. And I guess just the other thing too is that, we're going to be coming back and reviewing this in the future again. So, if there are big changes to our communities, if there's an issue, this isn't set in stone forever. There's always the opportunity to come back to us in the future. Claire.
Yeah, and I also support the approach because I do put a lot of faith in the district licensing committee's role in this because I think that they're the best ones. If there is a question of what impact it might have, and a supermarket might be able to demonstrate, that the impact's going to be very low or pretty low, nothing. Yeah, and so I really like that feature of our local alcohol policy. Yeah, and think that will, I suppose, provide that the balance that we're wanting to achieve here.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Okay, all right. If everyone's comfortable with that, we'll move on to the other big issue, the caps.
So yeah, sticking with off licenses, the question that was asked here is, do you support the cap on off licenses in the main shopping centres of Te Awamutu, Kiki, Leamington and Cambridge? And the proposal is basically to cap when this policy comes into force, to cap it at that number that is there at that time. And this will be reviewed in 6 years. And it is in a very defined area, which is pretty much the town centres. A total of 139 submissions were received to this question. And staff recommend the following changes as a result of the submissions. Suggested improvements to the council website will be investigated. So that is showing what the cap numbers are currently. And also words included in the draft lap that are also included in Schedule 1 will be italicised. So same thing came through here again. Some of those terms just need to be clear. So yeah, for the council website, it's possible there could be a map layer that you could activate to see what's happening. And the points that were considered with the caps, so a couple of unintended consequences of having a cap that were thought about is the restricting development, especially in areas such as Carter's Flat, creating possible development on the fringes of the caps, and also entrenching those existing operators. But I guess just important to also remember that the cap does not stop supermarkets and grocery stores from opening within the cap. It just means they can't sell alcohol. So I feel, yeah, some things for you to consider if you're happy with those possible unintended consequences.
Yeah, thanks, Mika. And I think there was also a submission around some of the other outlying villages that we have, Pirongia, Ohaupo, as to whether we should be introducing a cap there as well. But, you know, I think that's probably something for the next time we review this again in the future. All right, so any queries, questions? We've got Roger online.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think I agree with the quantum, the established quantum there. It's particularly for Cambridge, just looking at there's 14 existing properties. But I think we can't ignore the fact that with the types of suburban development that we're getting and the creation of small food markets with liquor available, then we've got to remember that the supply is enhanced by those other units that are outside of these shopping centres. So I don't see that this is really a restriction or a restrictive practice on competition. I think it's right. I think the balance is good from my point of view.
Yeah, and your point is well made, Roger. This isn't going to stop growth, given that we've got, you know, perimeters around this as well. That's really important. I saw, it was a good year ago now on social media channels, quite a large outcry actually in Cambridge around the volume or the number of off licenses that were popping up. And I'm not surprised by the percentage, 73.4. I think that's very indicative of how our community feels around that public display, that availability of purchasing of alcohol. So anyway, I think this is for me pretty straightforward, but happy to take any other comments or queries. Siren's going off. That's just one. Well, thanks, Carl. Yep. Okay, if everyone's happy with that, there's no other queries around the caps, we'll move on to number 6.
So 6 of 11 is, again, other comments in addition that didn't fit in the questions relating to off licenses. So there were quite a few here. Discretionary conditions was a hot topic. So just to be clear, a discretionary condition is added to a license at the discretion of the District Licensing Committee. Having it in a local alcohol policy does not mean it will end up on someone's license. So there are a whole list of staff recommendations. Would you like me to go through all of them, Liz?
No, I think that we've got them in front of us, so we can see them. And I think, yeah, we've obviously pre-read them as well. Roger.
Yeah, I mean, the only comment is I'd very much endorse your comment about the non-alcoholic products that encourage drinking. I'm talking very much like the beer pong cups. I mean, I thought that was a bit silly, the original suggestion that they should not be marketed in a supermarket. I've just got to say that I have got grandsons that enjoy playing beer pong, and they just use ordinary plastic cups. So that restriction would have made absolutely no difference whatsoever. So I acknowledge and support the change to the wording on those such products.
Thanks, Roger. Any other comments on this particular item? No? Okay, let's carry on through.
Now we move to club licenses. So club licenses are usually restricted to like a club, a social club, a sports club, where members and their approved guests drink on the premises. So the question that was asked is, do you support the changes to the rules around one-way door policies and discretionary conditions for club licenses? The proposal being one-way door restrictions can now only be applied to Class 1 clubs with a closing time later than midnight. The Class 1 club is a club that has at least 1,000 members over 18 years and operates like a tavern at least one night a week. 134 submissions were received to this question, with 51.5 people saying, yes, I support the proposed changes, 41 saying, no, I prefer the current rules, and 7.5 saying other. Staff recommendation as a result of consultation. Again, there are 4 points here. It's that same changing the wording of host responsibility policy for consistency. Incidents must be recorded in a register within 12 hours of the incident occurring. This is again for consistency with on and off licenses. Replace CCTV with the word security cameras, as this gives the licensed premises more options to comply, and change the current wording of footpaths to outside areas. And lastly, the suggested wording for the condition relating to duty manager should be included, which is the licensee must ensure that the duty manager is present at the following times: on Friday and Saturdays from 8 p.m. if the club is operating at that time, and at any other time when over 50 patrons can be reasonably expected to be present and the bar is open. That's it.
All right, any queries on the club license? Roger?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Now, the only question is, and I'm I'm making an assumption that rugby clubs would fall into this category.
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. So what would be the situation, let's say we have a World Cup and there's a game on at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. How would this apply to those clubs in that instance? Or would there be some discretion from any avenue.
I'll let Carl know that. Sorry, Carl will know that. I will get him to answer.
Anyone can be on a club premises at any time, so the hours only apply to the sale of alcohol. So they could be there for the event if the bar was shut. That's probably the first point. The second one is if any event like that is occurring outside of their standard license hours, then they would fit into the special license provisions, and that would be considered as well. Just being there to watch a televised game would not be an event, but if there was something else going on at the same time that made it an event, if that makes sense. So an event needs to be at the location where the license applies. So you can be watching a televised game, but there needs to be something else happening there at the same time to make it special. So they would fit into the special license application process.
So clarification on that, please. So if it was just for the watching of a televised World Cup game at 4 o'clock in the morning, could they apply for a special license for the sale of alcohol during that time that they were doing that?
Yes, the answer is yes.
They could apply, and the DLC would give the usual consideration to that.
That's fine.
Yep,
Thank you.
I'll just highlight too, Roger, that the government actually has previously brought in special legislation for some of those World Cup rugby games that overrides the local alcohol policies.
And that's a true consideration, is it not?
Philip.
Thank you.
Just on that, we would have had those scenarios with the America's Cup the last week or two being early in the morning. So, yeah, because they often have get-togethers, don't they, up in Auckland and things.
I'm quite happy as long as we're not restricting anything for those type of events. That's good. That's fine. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. Okay, Lou and then Claire.
Thank you very much. Just on the club licenses, we do have a situation at times where operation is open, but the manager, the club bar manager, might not be available. You know, they're not on the premises. They're available on the phone or something. This is particularly where you've got a situation where they are opening early, might have 4, 5, 6 patrons, or even just setting up. That doesn't include this. It does allow that to happen. And I'll give you an example of a rugby club, for example, when you open up and they're playing the games. And there's hardly anybody in the club, but they are just there loading and operating. The bar is available to the odd patron, but there's not a lot there. That would be perfectly all right, as I can understand.
Yeah, so this provision is designed to sort of look at that scenario so that there's a difference between a manager being on duty and being on the premises. So this is intended to tie those two requirements together, that a duty manager should be there physically during these times. In other cases, yes, there might be some discretion.
Thank you. Right, Claire.
Yeah, thanks. So I raised a question about the response to one of the submissions, and so that's on page 115, and it was the bottom one in that table where there was the submitters asking for consideration be given to a mandatory distance or radius to other facilities or other outlets, and the response mentions that clubs need to be located near their facilities that they use, and also often on reserve land. So the implication is that they're not likely to be creating a cluster issue. But I just thought that it should be more explicit to say that the clubs aren't part of that formula for the density thing, and it's because that it hasn't been I suppose there hasn't been any complaints or bad impacts that have been discerned because of it.
No, that's all correct. I guess the other thing to consider as well is that clubs are only open to members. So it also, makes it a little bit less.
And the amenity and good order measure will still apply to their applications as well.
All right, thanks, Claire. Let's carry through.
So there were also additional comments received on club licenses that didn't fit into the questions, and as a result of those comments from submitters, staff don't recommend any changes to the draft. So it's pretty quick one.
Okay,
You'll
just
have
want to
your-
know, are there any queries around the CCTV cameras that did come up in our number of submissions? All happy with that? Yeah, I personally think it's a good move and for all the reasons we've talked about in the past. So, yep, very good. Okay.
Special licenses. So the question that was asked was, do you support the changes to discretionary conditions for special licenses? The proposal is that discretionary conditions are decided on a case-by-case basis. Council suggests that conditions to the district licensing committee suggest what conditions the district licensing committee might want to consider, but the district licensing committee has the final say. We are proposing to add and to clarify the following list of discretionary conditions for special licenses. Alcohol management plans for events of 400 people or more, conditions relating to non-glass types of vessels to avoid injury and damage, number and kind of alcoholic beverages, engagement with police, medical officer of health and licensing inspector, queue management, staggered closing times, and security. The total of 134 submissions were made, with one submission not included in the diagram provided with that bar graph, due to the submission being received by email and it didn't quite fit in with the question. And staff recommendation is basically just one, but it's a long one, is to replace the alcohol management plan with the following wording related to large scale events, for combining to a recommendation from a submission and the current wording, basically splicing it together around large scale events of 400 people or more. Do you want me to read it out?
No, we've got it in front of us. I think we've got it all here, so that's all good. All righty, anything else? Everyone's happy? Special licenses, excellent. All right, let's keep moving through.
So recommendation 10 of 11, also a short one. This is to amend clause 5.3.1 and adding the word exceptional, saying that special licenses are for exceptional circumstances, essentially.
Okay, brilliant. No comments, right? No, all good, carry through.
And the
I'm very
Luke?
positive on that because I think it gives a bit of leeway, just to give you a little bit of extra.
The final one is, again, those general comments overall. I guess one of the more prominent ones there was seeking clarification around how you measure the distances. But staff believe that what is currently in the draft lap explains it well enough, and as far as the other submissions go, there are no other changes recommended.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Any other queries around any of that? No? Clear?
No, but I did pick up a few minor typos in the actual wording of the draft policy. So will there just be
Yeah, Diana's made a special recommendation for that.
okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, they're very minor, but it does affect the way it's implemented. So yeah.
Okay, brilliant. All right, we're going to move to our recommendation if there's no other comments. So this is on page 67. If you just take a look at our screen, there have been some amendments. So if you just take a moment to read that. Can you actually read that? You can come up to the screen if you need to. All right, so it's really just acknowledging the minor corrections in that last part there, but otherwise
Fine.
we still have A, B, C, D and E, just with that small amendment to the last one. So do I have a mover and a
Yes,
seconder?
I'll move in that direction, Madam Chair.
Okay, Roger would like to move the local alcohol policy and Dale Marie would like to second it. I'd like to put that to the floor. So all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right. Now, this has been quite a journey for the team here. So I'd like to acknowledge Mika in particular, Carl as well, the support. I think that when we look at the number of submissions, I'd like to acknowledge the comms team. When you look at the number of people that engaged in this process, it was very, very good. So yeah, great strategy to Lisa and her team as well. So thank you to all the submitters, those who came in person, those who came online, those who submitted to our process and told us how they felt. I think this is often a sensitive subject, and it's not an easy one to grapple with for every community in our district. So I think this has been an excellent display of how collaboratively we come to a good amendment of what was our current policy. So congratulations to everybody for the great work done here. All right, so with that, we will move to the end of our meeting and ask Dale Marie to close us off with karakia. Thank you.
Ka rawe koe mai ka rawe ko kao. I tō korua mahi o tēnei kaupapa, koutou rā o te whare waipa. Hei whakakapi tēnei kaupapa. Woohoo! Good for a drink after this. Kia tau te mauri, kia tau te mahi, kia tau te āhua o tēnei whare. Tūturu whakamaua kia tīna, tīna, haumie, huie, tāe kie. Tēnā koutou.
All right, everybody, that is our conclusion of our day. So we've got some